Ukoliko se ovom terapijom tretira pacijent koji boluje od AIDS-a, rezultati će biti vidljivi u 3-4 dana. Imamo leukemiju, kao što je gospodin pitao. Nakon jedne terapije naše kod leukemije, objektivnim analizama krvi vidit ćemo da je stanje popravljeno. To je jedino bitno u čitavoj priči. A ostalo, to nije za vas sada, to će biti posao znanstvenika u znanstvenim institucijama koji će jednog dana dobro shvatiti šta se događa.
I'm inviting to the stage our guest, the distinguished healer, Mr. Zdenko Domančić. Mr. Zdenko Domančić is a world-renowned healer. For over 25 years, using his own method of bioenergy healing, he and his students have helped more than 1 million people.
Bolesti ne zdravi niko. Medicina ne zdravi bolesti. Nego šta radi medicina? Putem određenih preparata, medikamenata, etc., ona pokušava ono što mi radimo opet na drugi način. Popraviti obrambeni sistem. Tijelo zdravi samo sebe. Medikament je provokacija simptoma te iste bolesti. Nije vakcina lijek, nego se ide opet na provociranje obrambenog sistema da bi stvorio antitijela, etc., etc. Prema tome, liječenje u onom smislu u kojem ga vi shvaćate, to ne postoji.
Healing with bioenergy, or laying of hands, is perhaps the oldest known method of healing and is practiced around the world. Bioenergy is believed to be cosmic energy, the life-sustaining force of the universe. 5,000 years ago in India, Hindus called it prana, or breath. In China, it is named qi, where for centuries this vital energy has been used by Qigong masters to balance and invigorate the human energy field.
The Chinese saying of blood is the mother of qi. So all these years, the Chinese have thought of like blood and qi being related.
The Jewish mystical teachings of the Kabbalah describes this energy as the astral light. While throughout Christianity, glowing halos are shown around the heads of angels and saints.
There is an electromagnetic envelope surrounding and permeating the body.
In ancient Greece, Pythagoras, known as the first mathematician, believed that this vital energy was a luminous body capable of physical healing, and the renowned father of medicine, Hippocrates, described bioenergy as the force which flows through many people's hands.
It's not our physical dimension.
During the 1970s, a new method of bioenergy healing was introduced to the West by Zdenko Domančić. After treating thousands of people in the former Yugoslavia, his simple and effective therapy successfully underwent rigorous scientific research. Now, at the Domančić Bioenergy Clinic in Kranjska Gora, Slovenia, therapists help every health condition, from Parkinson's, epilepsy, diabetes, to Alzheimer's, cancer, heart disease, and stroke. As the word spreads, patients and students travel from around the world to attend his 4-day group therapy sessions and seminars. Today, bioenergy still cannot be scientifically defined, but in healing, the effects can be measured, seen, and most definitely felt.
On Thursday, I found out I had hepatitis C. The next day, I was already at Mr. Domancic's clinic. He treated me, which meant a treatment of 10 to 15 minutes, and I could return to Zagreb on the same day. On Monday, I decided to go back to the hospital for infectious diseases and demand new tests. My doctors were very surprised, since only 3 days had passed and it would be impossible to notice any changes in my condition, meaning I should accept the fact that I am sick, but I absolutely insisted on having new testing. After more tests, which were ready in 2 days, I found out that the new results were negative. The doctors could not believe it. They even called the lab to check if this was really true. And they found that my results were really negative even after only 4 days. My doctor then asked me what I did, and I told him the truth, that I had seen a bioenergy healer. It is so unbelievable to me that you might have an illness for all of your life, which is incurable, and it is cured after a treatment of only 10 minutes. Besides that, I was born with hemophilia. It is a genetically inherited illness, the lack of leukocytes in the body, making it hard for the blood to coagulate. Mr. Domancic treated me for that too, so these new tests showed the normal count of leukocytes as well. This disease, in medical books, is considered to be incurable.
I'm a doctor. I'm a pediatrician. My wife, which has we know about her breast cancer the last 7 months. After 2 days of treatment, we started feeling strange things, let's say positive things, very, very good energies that were flowing inside ourselves. We walked around here in Kanchka Gora. We felt at least stupid smile on our face. We didn't understand where is it coming from. It's the first time in our life that we're walking around with this sensation inside and experience it outside. And after 8 days, Mr. Domancic told us that we'll wait another week. So we went back and we asked for the best doctor in Israel who's making the ultrasound, and we repeated the exam, and the tumors went like 40 to 50% less, reduction in 40–50% less.
My father's been ill for a long time now. In his life, he's had numerous surgeries on his vascular system. 3 years ago, he had a strong heart attack, which caused his condition to deteriorate.
I have known Mr. Požár for several years. He is a serious heart and pulmonary patient, and at the same time, he has a severe disorder of arteries in his lower extremities. For over a year, we know that he has heavy blood flow obstructions. But his is not a case of critical ischemia yet. That's why we haven't decided on a treatment with prostaglandins, which in cases of critical ischemia is often helpful with patients like this. Some years ago, a bypass operation was performed on his lower left extremity. But the bypass became clogged, and we decided not to perform another surgery since we are dealing with a heavy pulmonary and heart patient. When we found out about the possibility of healing with bioenergy, we didn't have any second thoughts, since we knew that practically all the possibilities of treatment with medicines that we have today were exhausted, except the mentioned infusions of prostaglandins that are only reserved for critical ischemia, which this patient doesn't yet have.
Ali nemojte mu dati energije preko 20 godina, znači. Ali ja sam stavio. Kako ide?
Even entering the room is something special. First, you just observe, and you don't really know what's going on. All the people that treat the patients, which range from small children to older people, to some people that really only came to feel better for wellness, to some that are very ill. When you actually see what already happened to them, when you hear of people that had cancer and got cured, of children that didn't walk and are now walking, I have to admit that the first day I was very, very surprised. And when my father walked the whole length of the room, after the first treatment, I was shocked. Most of all, it was unusual for me, since I imagined biotherapy something more intimate, the patient and the bioenergist. But here all kinds of things are going on. People are walking, the children are milling around, people are chatting, the therapists are chatting as well. And in the end, maybe this is the right thing. It's all about life and feeling well after all, and maybe we take this too seriously. I don't know.
Do you know what? I was so surprised when they laid their hands on my legs or anywhere else. It was like feeling a heater.
I can conclude that Mr. Požar's improvement achieved with bioenergy treatment was comparable to results that we would achieve with a 2-week hospital treatment of infusions of prostaglandins. And we would be very satisfied if we even achieved that. So I definitely think it would be beneficial to treat other patients in this manner as well.
Moj pacijent nema posla sa mnom. Ja sam instrument. Znate šta je instrument? Sam medium. Ja sam onaj koji zna kako uzeti i dati. Ta energija je informirana. Ko je informirao tu energiju? Stvoritelj. Nazovite to prirodom, Bogom, kako god vas je volja. U informaciji te energije da se svaka bolest liječi. Mi živimo u energetskom tijelu. Nazvali su ga obrambeni sistem.
The way I describe a biofield is that there is an electromagnetic envelope surrounding and permeating the body that has information, contains information that is important to the well-being of the person and that is affected by the well-being of the person.
Dakle, čovjek je bolestan kad je taj univerzalni doktor u njemu, kojega zovemo obrambeni sistem, u defektu na jednom dijelu tijela ili na jednom organu. Onda smo mi bolesni.
When we go through a life experience that registers in us as traumatic, the nature of the trauma from an energy point of view is that our energy system becomes frozen in a specific energy signature, if you will, that contains all the thoughts and feelings that we had going through that experience. And the thoughts and feelings we had in the aftermath of that experience when we weren't able to fully digest and release that life experience.
Dakle, terapeut, arrivederci, Ćao Nona. Dakle, terapeut i u stvari moglo bi ga se nazvati mehaničarom obrambenog sistema. Onog trenutka kad ste vi tu energiju koja je zadužena da budemo zdravi, koja je u defektu popravili, čovjek zdravi.
That frozen state, if it becomes an ongoing state of being, affects us on all levels. It freezes us biologically, chemically, spiritually, in our relationships. And so the implications of undigested life experiences end up being much broader and much larger and much more far-reaching in their effects than most people realize.
One area that we're very interested in is trying to bridge the gap between Western biomedical sciences, where we could measure, again, like the heart function, nervous function, and the Oriental concept of qi, this vital energy in the body that cannot be scientifically defined or measured. So we want to see to what extent we could measure changes in body energy that we can measure before, during, and after practicing Qigong and Tai Chi. So we measure what we can measure, energy emanating from the body in the form of heat, in the form of light and electricity and magnetism. So this method is called the gas discharge visualization method, or GDV, for quantifying the aura, or the a reflection of the electrical field on the fingers. There are certain Chinese sayings like where the intention goes, so goes the qi, and so goes the blood. Ah, okay. Well, then the concept is qi and blood are somewhat related. Or the Chinese saying of blood is the mother of qi. So all these years, the Chinese have thought of like blood and qi being related. So that's why just now I explained how we can measure blood flow. We cannot measure qi because it's a concept, but we can certainly measure blood flow. We can show that there's an increase in blood flow if you practice Qigong. I'm, just coming just short of saying we're measuring qi, but we're measuring something that's related to the concept of qi. So when you say qi is not flowing well, you can say, oh, the blood is not flowing well. But if the blood is not flowing well, it could lead to a whole number of hormones and so forth in the immune system not doing well, or vice versa.
You will learn how to treat gangrene, for example. My father went through scientific evaluation with gangrene and proved that an incurable disease is curable with our method. What does this mean? It means that all the brains, the whole medical science, all the specialists that deal with circulatory problems and increasing the circulation in lower extremities, all the brains of mankind in this field are not able to solve the problem of gangrene. But any of you will learn in a couple of days how to do this and be 100% successful. Does this mean that we are smarter than all the scientists in the world? No, far from it. It's just that we are able to do something about it.
You learn a skill. Now, this I can believe you can learn in 4 days. I don't think we learn to understand what's beyond it or behind it. I do find it fascinating, but it's a technique. If you're attentive enough and you learn the technique, and you don't pretend that we are doing more than using a technique that somebody gave us.
It hurts her when she moves it. There's a lack of energy. We have to add the energy, so certain biochemical processes can be initiated by adding this energy, so the pain can be eliminated. How? The production of the joint fluid will increase in tendon tissue, which will lubricate the joint. There will be less friction and the irritation will recede. The energy is always the same. If there is too much of it, we'll take some out. Ask the patient if it's better. If not, we'll take some more out. Until the potential is balanced and the patient says, now much better. Every time your hands are under tension, you are emitting the energy. When your hands are relaxed, you are not emitting. There is still a certain amount of energy attached to the hand, but there is no emission. When we perform positive therapy, moving from periphery towards the center, the hands and arms are tense, contracted. You balance the biofield with this particular movements. Everything happens automatically. You just have to do these movements, and don't worry, everything will happen by itself. Be aware of another fact, that you, as a conduit of energy, are on the therapy at the same time. And if you do have certain problems, they will be corrected by your work with biotherapy as well.
Sam rad bioterapije. U redu? Eto tako.
It changed my life. I was absolutely fascinated. And I felt so inspired by what I saw. And when Michael and I were talking about it afterwards, we said, the people of Ireland have to have this therapy. So that's how the whole thing started.
Through our involvement with martial arts, we became very much aware of a system that had been developed in Yugoslavia by Zdenko Domancic, a system called bioenergy therapy. We also became aware that a commission had been set up to investigate the effectiveness of the treatment and found that certainly the treatment could be of benefit to people.
I had the treatment as well and had the chance to experience the treatment, and I was absolutely amazed. I was absolutely amazed at what I saw and what I had felt. And when I saw hundreds, thousands of people queuing up to this little house on the island of Ugalan, to Zdenko's house, and we got in because we were introduced already. I was amazed to feel what I felt when the therapist started to work with me, that he could actually practically tell me my life history of health, which was very accurate.
We came back and we, through just friends, started treating those people. Just word of mouth travel that what we were doing was making a difference.
I suppose Michael and I have seen probably more illnesses than most doctors in casualty, because everybody comes when nothing else will help. The beautiful thing about working with the energy is it doesn't matter what condition the person has. We see it as a blockage of energy. You have an associated blockage of energy somewhere in your energy system, whether it's at a chakra level, a meridian level, an auric field level, or in the spine or in the brain. There's a blockage somewhere. So once we detect that blockage through feeling the energy system, being sensitive to the energy field, we can release it. I often say to people, you know, you're blocked, not sick. Once you treat it at an energetic level, the crystallized blockages, we call them crystallized blockages, seem to break down. And when they break down, the energy starts to move, the symptoms usually start to disappear.
You have the body, which is physical form, it's matter. And then you have the energy, which is the energy flow. And then what we have beyond that, of course, is what we have called the void, or it's the stillness, you know. And in our form state, our body is continuously reflecting the programming that's going on at a very, very deep level. So where we see it is that when a patient comes to our clinics, that you're not just looking at the body in this particular state, but you're looking at thousands of years of genetic makeup and memory. And the memory of whatever impact we have in our lives lodges as a frequency within every cell of our body. Everything is a frequency, everything is a memory. And if we can change the memory, if we can alter the frequency process, then this can certainly bring about physiological change, that the matter itself can reflect that change. And we've shown in the clinics that working at an energetic level can, in some way, help the individual to develop his own or her own individual capability to prevent these problems from developing.
Isceljivanje je provokacija transformacije u načinu postupanja I mišljenja na nivou podsvijesti.
What we are finding in biology is that it is information from the environment and information from our own thoughts and beliefs and feelings that gives our cells signaling that unsheaths the availability of the genetic code to impact how the cell functions.
For instance, research here at UC Irvine, what's called functional MRI. We can now tell which part of the brain is active and consuming more oxygen, and we can look at that. So you put a needle here, okay, you can see that, oh, this part of the brain that's involved in vision is activated. Or put a needle here, this part of the brain that has to do with hearing is activated. Okay, that's a direct effect. You can, move your hands in a certain way, and certain parts of the brain would be affected. Now they show that if you see a movement, the visual information could activate certain parts of the brain. Now, next thing you know, just thinking about it, if you just close your eyes and think about the movement, it activates that part of the brain as well. So now we can say, you can activate the brain by, putting a needle, putting a finger, put pressure on, moving it yourself, or just think about doing it. So the information of thinking or seeing or reading or watching a screen could actually activate the brain. The brain would secrete different types of hormones.
Dakle, vi ćete moći vidjeti da sam ja u otopini kalcijum karbonata. Ja sam energijom, dakle pogledom na tu posudu, stvorio od tih kockica cvijeće, stabla, pa su to nazvali skulpture uma. Iako to ja nisam napravio sam. Informacija života je već u ovoj energiji.
We began to work, to make research. We have to move to Ljubljana, to faculty, to institute, Josef Stefan, where we could see the changes after influence of this energy which goes through the therapy, through the hands of healer. We could observe these changes under electron scanning microscope. We can see the crystallization forms of calcium carbonate in the water solution. This is the untreated solution. We can see the different forms after treatment of Mr. Domancic. The form is a flower or blossom. So it's not a chaotic form. It has something to do with life. We could find always the same forms. Different, there's a few types. Which form we get, it's dependent of the method he's using. This is one of the effects which we can see after this manipulation of Mr. Domancic or his students.
I found that I got a bladder inflammation, and actually I went to the pharmacy and bought some antibiotics to be on the safe side. But before I started to take this, I called Mr. Domancic. And he said, okay, I'm coming back to you in a few hours, wait. Okay? He called me after a few hours, and what have you? I described what I had, and he said, well, take a seat for 15 minutes, be quiet, and I'm sending you a treatment. After 15 minutes, he calls me back, and he says, well, now you get up, and you go and see there is no more blood, and the whole thing is going to be over. And that's what was. I went and saw there was no blood, and as if never happened. nothing was there anymore. So this is incredible, because it was a real proof of the whole system, whole method. He was in the island, in Croatia, when I was in Tel Aviv.
Moramo shvatiti da je daljina privilegija ograničenog uma. Da u ovoj dimenziji iz koje mi djelujemo na pacijenta ne postoji distanca. Na mojim seminarima za 20 minuta svaki moj seminarac nauči kako će djelovati na osobu koja je desetine hiljada kilometara daleko od njega, kako će to uspješno raditi.
This is energy, and now we can measure also the effects which are caused in a great distance, and the effects are in real time. You can see it. The patient is here, Zdenko is there. The patient in Australia, Zdenko is Kranjska Gora.
The Institute of Noetic Sciences is committed to doing rigorous research, so in many ways we're a sort of a think tank. And we were formed about 30 years ago by the Apollo astronaut, Edgar Mitchell. And Edgar was the 5th man to walk on the moon. An important part of our mission is to conduct cutting-edge research that looks at the interface between consciousness and the physical world. So one of the important ways that we do that is through the lens of healing. We look at ways in which our thoughts, our emotions, our belief system can influence our physiology. So the whole area of psychoneuroimmunology or mind-body medicine was, helped to be birthed by the Institute of Noetic Sciences in our work. More recently, we've become interested in looking at the ways in which our thoughts and beliefs may influence others, even at a distance. So things like biofields, subtle energies, distant healing, prayer, spirituality, all come into the research focus of our work at the Institute of Noetic Sciences.
Current science is not very comfortable with the idea of distant healing, because the act of my biofields will extend out to the end of the universe, but they get so weak so quickly that the practical aspect of it is so weak beyond a matter of maybe 30 or 40 feet that it's not even detectable anymore. So the question arises as to whether something else may be going on. And my guess is that it is not a physical effect in terms of classical physics. It's much more likely to be something like a quantum effect. But it's difficult then to talk about precisely what we mean, so we can just say then that it's something to do with intention. Intention works differently at a distance, and it is not like a classical physical effect.
Intention is focused purpose that is meant to express a desire or meant to move a person in the direction of manifestation.
So, I mean, just in a kind of a visualized way, awareness is as though it's just something sitting there with no direction, not moving, anything. The moment you put intention on it, it goes. In some degree or another, every time we do an act, we make a decision, we do anything, it is a manifestation of our intention for ourselves. So what we're actually not too used to doing is intending to others, intending for others. How then do we understand that a healing practice that works close up also works at a distance? The only commonality is that the intention is the same in both cases, which may mean that if close-up healing works better than distant healing, and that's not very well established, but if it does work better, then we can say, well, it's a combination of intention plus biofields. And all you have at a distance is the intention. That's why it doesn't work as well. But if it turns out that they both work equally well, then the act of being close to somebody, the interacting biofields, might not make any difference at all. It's all due to intention. If I had to guess what was going on with these types of healing, my guess is that it is all intention. That there's no significant difference between being healed close up and being healed at a distance, except possibly that when you are in proximity to a healer and you can see them doing whatever they do, that will affect your belief system more, in which case you get a big placebo boost. But the intention is really where the action is.
Over this 25 years, this particular procedure, looking at distant mental interactions, particularly focusing on autonomic nervous system activity, that part of our physiology that functions automatically, has now been replicated in laboratories across the world. And overall, if you look at that database, the results are highly statistically significant. In other words, there is strong evidence from a well-controlled scientific perspective that, in fact, the intention of one person can influence the physiology of another person, even at a distance and even under conditions where the person has no idea when they're being intended for.
The verification that we get in person after person, client after client, practitioner after practitioner treating client after client and getting good, reliable results, it's the kind of proof, if you will, that the general public is going to look to for verification. If somebody they know was really noticeably helped, they're going to be interested.
On the one hand side, I was a disbeliever, of course, as most people are. On the other hand side, I had a lot of hope. We've never seen things that we saw in the sense of healing. We've never seen things like that anywhere before. Anywhere. It's really something that one doesn't understand. It amazes you completely, and you are absorbed in the treatment entirely. One very important element of the group therapy is that you see a lot of success. People that you know, their physical and mental situation changes, improves. So the fact that you are together with, let's say, 60, 80 people, this is what makes it the best show in the world, number one. And I think it gives a lot of encouragement and hope.
I think when people are in a room, having therapy, patients having therapy, I think they're all sort of more than surprised at how relaxed everything is, how gentle everything is. And yet, within there, they see this non-physical reality influencing people's bodies and minds and matter in the most incredible way.
The method of payment, it's also very humane, very, people who don't have come and get their treatment for whatever they have, a basket of fruits, a bunch of flowers, a hug, the fact that they were healed, the warmth, the gratitude, and those who do have pay accordingly as they appreciate the treatment. This is also it's very unique.
As a biologist, I would, ask for two things. One is statistics. You cannot have like one single case to prove the point. You have to have, something repeated many, many times, and you take an average and see whether there's a significant effect if you do it many, many times. And then the other thing is I would ask not just one person to do this. You need, like, if a Qigong master could do it, that's great. But I would like to have the Qigong master send 10 students to do this.
My name is Dragica Rosso. I've been living in Germany for 34 years now. At the moment, I'm working in a travel agency. Otherwise, I'm a housewife, mother. I've heard of Mr. Domancic, of his method, how he can help people, all the things one can do, and with my mother, actually there are many sick people in my family, but my mother is a long-time heart patient.
10 years ago, I received 2 artificial heart valves, and since then, I've had a steady heart valve arrhythmia. Doctors try to correct it with a heart catheter and electroshocks to achieve a correct rhythm of the heart, but were unfortunately not successful. So that for years, I've been struggling with this disorder. It was hard for me to work. I was tiring easy. I had no strength. But now, after my daughter treated me with bioenergy, the problem has disappeared. All my doctors, my cardiologist, my family doctor, are now convinced that everything is back to normal. This is an affidavit from my cardiologist that I don't have the arrhythmia anymore and have the correct sinus rhythm of the heart valves.
She also had asthma and had to use an inhaler all the time, meaning she really couldn't live without one.
Since I was treated by my daughter, that too is really better, and I don't need to use the inhaler anymore.
The most important thing for me so far was that I could help my mother.
Now we can see the effects. We can even measure the effects. And we can repeat the experiment. We can see the influence. But now when we can see the effects, we can improve the method. And Duško succeeded. Duško radiated the energy, and he stopped to radiate. You see this change? Then he repeated the energy radiation of energy again. Now we know that he can change even the strength of the field, radiated field. And this can be used in therapy if the therapist can influence or control his performance.
The number worldwide of active researchers is about 50. 50 does not make a scientific effort, in a sense. You know, we're not amateurs in the sense that we're all professionally trained. We're using our skills for this kind of research. But is there a taboo against it? Absolutely. There's something like 3,000 academic departments around the world that are accredited in various places. Of those 3,000 academic places, less than 1%, way less than 1%, like 1/10 of 1%, have any faculty who have publicly acknowledged that they're interested in these phenomena. So you take 0.1% of academia, and then you go to the general public and you ask people, well, are you interested in things like psychic phenomena and gut feelings and distant healing? And you get pretty consistently not only like 80 to 90% of people who are interested, but 60% who believe that it's true. So you have 60% of the general population, and you have 0.1% of academia, which is supposedly going to study these things, and you have a gigantic disconnect. So the taboos, whether they're coming from the scientific side or the religious side, are very, very strong, and it exists throughout the world.
People who aren't embracing yet of this point of view need to look at this point of view as being insane and crazy and stupid and unscientific, or whatever term they need to use, because the implications of what would happen to their own view of themselves and their own view of how the world works are so huge that it just feels too terrifying to even consider the possibility that maybe there's something to it.
Looking at this, for me at least, strange way of treatment was very, very hard to accept. So if I wouldn't see the results in my eyes and testimonies of so many people, I wouldn't have believed. So I guess if it was so difficult for me to accept such a method, I guess that for the major part of the physicians, the doctors, all over the world, not only in Israel, it's close to impossible.
There is a kind of threat that people who have received a lot of technical, detailed, in-depth, time-consuming, money-consuming training will experience, which is that threat that says, oh my gosh, if it's this simple, if healing is much more simple than I was ever taught, then what does all of my investment of time and money mean?
assuming that these phenomena are real, I'm convinced they're real, three things could happen. One is that the scientific controversy is completely finessed by the development of an application, because science is always finessed, and medicine also, by applications. If you can go to a department store and buy something and it does something, then nobody essentially cares how it works. Most people don't know how a DVD player works, but they don't care. It does something for them. The science underneath the DVD player took a century or two to develop, and most people wouldn't understand it even if they did see with the innards of the device. So if somebody came up with an application which was undeniable, and then the issue would be over. And then science would become interested because they'd want to understand it. The second way is if the taboo were broken. They're essentially dealing with the parable of the emperor's new clothes. That if everyone is afraid to say in public what everyone knows to be true, then the taboo will sustain. If you have a couple of authoritative people saying, you know what, I think this really is interesting. It takes courage to do that, and you need enough people in order to do that to make it happen, but that is another way of eliminating, or at least alleviating, the taboo. And the third way is that there's a theoretical breakthrough, which will probably not occur within our field, but occur within another field, like quantum physics is a possibility. Or maybe some other field, maybe a current interest in entanglement, for example. Maybe bioentanglement will be discovered. You know, someone will do an experiment involving two little fleas or something and show that if you poke one, the other one responds. And they'll show that it's an entanglement phenomenon. That could blow the door wide open, because suddenly it provides a plausibility argument for how the phenomena that people report is true.
As the Newtonian scientific method gets replaced by the post-Einsteinian scientific method in the fields of biology and psychology, we will no longer have this gap that we currently have. This is a paradigm gap in terms of the understanding of the scientific method and how the scientific method is conducted.
Our limits here are primarily based on what we can imagine. And so sometimes scientists are disturbed by the fact that they can't see what would be next. They can't imagine, well, how could we get beyond quantum mechanics, or how could we get beyond anything? And the answer is in the very way that it's phrased. They can't imagine how that would be. It doesn't trouble me very much, because you look at historically, at every stage, nobody could hardly imagine beyond where they are. So I can very easily imagine, you can just project out a few centuries from now, and our understanding of the physical world will be extremely different.
The problems of this world cannot be solved by skeptics or cynics, whose horizons are limited by the obvious realities, but people of vision, confidence, hope, and imagination. Now, probably up until now, only certain people seem to fulfill that criteria, but I can certainly see bioenergy open the doors to many thousands and millions of people fulfilling that criteria of being these special people.
One of the Western creation stories says, in the beginning, there was the Word. That's thought. That's concept. That's belief. So we even have a collective unconscious recollection that at the heart of everything is some combination of thought and light. In the beginning, there was light. This combination of thought and light is what fuels us as beings in this universe. And as human beings begin to really appreciate the implications, the profound, far-reaching implications of that, they will start to be empowered to move into a level of self-efficacy and self-responsibility, the likes of which we have probably never seen before in the history of humanity.